Picture this. It's a completely normal weekday afternoon in November 2013 in Oakland, California. The kind of noisy, crowded afternoon commute we've all experienced. But on the 57 bus, two vastly different worlds are about to collide. In just a matter of moments, a devastating event is going to unfold that permanently alters the lives of two local teenagers and their families. And it doesn't stop there. This incident instantly ignites a massive, super complex conversation that ends up echoing across the entire country. So in this explainer, we're going to dive deep into a story that starts with one split-second decision, but quickly unravels to expose some really deep societal fault lines. Let's actually look at the two 16-year-olds who boarded that bus. They were sitting just a few seats apart, but they were living in two incredibly different realities. First, we have Sasha. Sasha was this thoughtful, really creative, academically gifted student. They'd recently started wearing a white skirt to school, which was a proud, visible expression of their agender identity. And Sasha's world was anchored by deeply supportive friends and family. But then, just a few feet away, sat Richard. His day-to-day life was practically the opposite, defined by the harsh realities of poverty, community violence, and just a lot of instability. Richard was known as the class clown, right? A goofball who was highly prone to cracking jokes and acting on immediate, reckless impulses. Right off the bat, this stark contrast forces us to drop those simple, two-dimensional victim and criminal stereotypes we're so used to seeing on the evening news.
And the tragedy itself? It's not like it stemmed from some long, drawn-out confrontation or heated argument. We are literally talking about a matter of minutes. After school, the teenagers file onto the bus, just chatting and laughing. Richard and his friends are messing around in the back, acting on typical reckless teenage impulse. But then, that impulsivity takes a completely devastating turn. Without any warning whatsoever, a lighter is sparked right near the hem of Sasha's skirt. Because the fabric was highly synthetic and incredibly flammable, it caught fire and spread with terrifying speed. In an instant, the joking and laughing just completely stopped, replaced by sheer panic.
The scene on that bus immediately turned into a horrific medical emergency. Because the flames accelerated so fast, Sasha suffered severe second and third degree burns over much of their body before another passenger was finally able to extinguish the fire. It's just wild to think about. In the blink of an eye, a mundane ride home morphs into a desperate race to the hospital, with Sasha literally fighting for their life in a specialized burn unit.
In the days that followed, we see two distinct, totally life-shattering nightmares playing out at the exact same time. For Sasha, reality becomes sterile hospital rooms, endure agonizing weeks of multiple surgeries, incredibly painful skin grafts, and the daunting reality of grueling physical rehab just to be able to walk again. Meanwhile, on a totally different trajectory, Richard is apprehended by the authorities. But here's the thing, he isn't just facing your standard juvenile charges. The district attorney decides to charge him as an adult, and they add severe hate crime enhancements on top of it. Suddenly, you have a 16-year-old kid staring down the barrel of a potential life sentence in state prison. Two teenagers, both facing completely devastated, yet entirely different futures. Now, as the legal gears started turning, a lot of people glancing at the local news expected a very familiar narrative. You know the one. The media frenzy kind of writes the script for us. An innocent, targeted victim attacked by a malicious, hateful criminal. Simple, right? Well, actually, as investigators dug deeper and journalists started talking to the families and friends involved, the picture that emerged was incredibly nuanced. It demanded that the public sit with a much more complicated and, frankly, uncomfortable reality.
When you look closely at the lives behind those sensational headlines, the complexities are just undeniable. Sasha's impact on the community was profound. Teachers and classmates described a brilliant kid who inspired everyone around them through genuine kindness and bold authenticity. And this led to a massive outpouring of local support. Richard's reality, on the other hand, was framed by a severe lack of guidance and opportunity. When speaking to the court, his friends and community members consistently described him as immature and deeply misguided. But, and this is a crucial point, they were adamant that he wasn't hateful or malicious. It raised this agonizing question. Did this kid even fully comprehend the horrific, permanent consequences of his actions when he flicked that lighter? And this brings us right into the courtroom, forcing everyone to confront a monumental question about our systemic response to youth offenses. When you factor in a teenager's biological immaturity, an environment of extreme poverty, and arguably a total lack of premeditated malice, how on earth does the justice system appropriately handle that? How can a judge or a jury account for a broken background without in any way minimizing the severe, life-altering trauma that was inflicted upon the victim? We really have to pause here and think about what's actually at stake. If a teenager commits an undeniably horrific act without fully grasping the permanence and gravity of it,
Is locking them away for decades in an adult penitentiary the most just outcome? Does a purely punitive approach actually make sense in the wake of such a complex human tragedy? Or does it just throw another life away, completely failing to address the root causes while offering zero real path forward? This exact debate became the central battleground of the legal proceedings. The district attorney's office argued for strict accountability. They emphasized the sheer brutality of the act and the need for public safety, which honestly is completely understandable. But on the other side, defense attorneys and even some prominent voices from the wider community pleaded for an approach that recognized a teenager's capacity for growth. Can we hold someone rigorously accountable for the damage they've done, while still providing the space and resources necessary for them to actually be rehabilitated? Because of all this single tragic local event absolutely blew up. It transcended the walls of that Oakland courthouse and fractured into two massive nationwide conversations. On a social level, the whole country was suddenly engaged in deep, highly necessary discussions about gender identity, the safety of LGBTQ youth in public spaces, and the pervasive reality of bullying. But simultaneously, systemic advocates were pointing out the glaring flaws in juvenile justice. They were highlighting how our education systems and wildly unequal community resources create environments where misguided kids just fall right through the cracks, way before they even reach adulthood. So, how did it all shake out? Ultimately, the legal and personal resolutions took definitive but very solemn paths. Richard legally accepted responsibility for his actions. He eventually entered a formal plea agreement that avoided a life sentence, but still required him to serve a substantial term in a state juvenile facility, formally acknowledging the severe harm he caused. For Sasha, the resolution wasn't found in a courtroom at all. Instead, it was a permanent uphill battle. Sasha returned to school and continued a remarkably resilient, long, and arduous journey of physical and emotional recovery, all triggered by just a single second of impulsive behavior. As legal experts and observers, if reflected on the end of the trial, one profound lesson emerged that really captures the tension of this entire story. It's the idea that understanding the circumstances behind a tragedy does not erase responsibility for it. That hits the nail on the head, right? We can deeply understand Richard's background of poverty. We can recognize his adolescent immaturity, and we can even acknowledge a lack of targeted malice, while still holding him absolutely accountable for the devastating harm he caused Sasha. Empathy and accountability, they're not mutually exclusive. So why does this explainer matter today? It matters because this story stubbornly refuses to fit into the comfortable, black and white narratives we usually prefer. It proves with terrifying clarity how one impulsive decision permanently alters an entire web of lives, victims, perpetrators, and their families. It challenges our entrenched views on who actually deserves compassion, and it forces a really uncomfortable reevaluation of what true justice looks like when we're confronted with unequal opportunity and human fallibility. I want to leave you with this final thought. When tragedy strikes, like it did that afternoon for Sasha and Richard, how do we balance necessary accountability with the very real possibility of human change? Can we rigorously demand justice and protect vulnerable communities while still leaving room for compassion and growth for those who have caused profound harm? It's a massive question, and there's definitely no easy answer. But for the health of our justice system and our society, it is one we have to keep asking.